Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma Pandomui Savadhana Mate Pandomui Savadhana Mate Yahara Prasade Bhai He Baba Chori Yahara Prasade Bhai He Baba Chori Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Koriya Aikya Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitte Te Koriya Aikya Arna Koriyo Mane Asha Arna Koriyo Mane Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Ese Utama Gati Shri Guru Charane Rati Ese Utama Gati Ye prasade pure sarva asha Ye prasade pure sarva asha Sakadana Diloye Janme Janme Prabhu Sehe Chakuram Diloye Janme Janme Prabhu Sehe He began Niribokasito He began Niribokasito Prema Bhakti Ate Abhya Vinasayate Prema Bhakti Ate Abhya Vinasayate Hare Gaya Hara Charito Hare Gaya Hara Charito Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Haramajanara Bandhu Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Haramajanara Bandhu Lokena Lokera Jivana Lokena Lokera Jivana Mahaprabhu Toya Doya Dehomare Paratoya Mahaprabhu Toya Doya Dehomare Paratoya Hridayas Dusiti Puvana Hridayas Dusiti Puvana Prabhu Toya Doya Dehomare Paratoya Prabhu Toya Doya Dehomare Paratoya Hridayas Dusiti Puvana Srila Prabhupada Bhaktita Pavana Gurudev Bhaktita Pavana Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Vadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nirvisesa Sunyavari Pastakare Sakarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare 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 Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Whoa! Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Hare Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Gopal Govinda Ram Simadhusudan. Gopal Govinda Ram Simadhusudan. Hare Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Hare Hare Nama Krishna Yadavaya Namaha. Gopal Govinda Ram Simadhusudan. Gopal Govinda Ram Simadhusudan. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Bol. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai. Jaya Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram, Krishna Balaram, Jaya Krishna Balaram. Jaya Radha Shama Sundar, Radha Shama Sundar Radhe. Jaya Radha Shama Sundar, Radha Shama Sundar Radhe. Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Nitya Hare Bol. Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Nitya Hare Bol. Nitya Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Nitya Hare Bol. Nitya Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Hare Bol, Nitya Hare Bol. Jai Om Vishnu Parad Balamahanta Parivasvasaya Asikala Shishi Manas Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Sri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Goa Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Sham Kun Radha Kun Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mathura Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Gangamai Ki Jai, Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Jai Gaur Premanande, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada Ki.
Hare Krishna. I'd like to welcome back Yadavar Prabhu. In a minute we're going to be viewing a DVD from his following Srila Prabhupada series. These are some quotes from Srila Prabhupada recorded in a little book, This Is My Request, which is on the subject of the distribution of his literature. So he said this in 1971. Many fanatic spiritual movements have come and gone, but without the flawless philosophy of Krishna, they cannot stand. Therefore, I want especially that my books and literature should be distributed profusely. This is our substance, real philosophical information, not some weak sentiments. So try for this, to give all men this Krishna philosophy, and many real devotees will come with us back to home, back to Godhead. Another quote, 1971 also. I want that you, all my students, shall very vigorously try for this book distribution. Another one, do not hesitate to use your American and European brains to increase. That is Krishna's special gift to you. Now use it. Any activity which will please Krishna should be accepted favorably, and this is our guiding principle. Now applied in this way, by doing everything and anything for spreading this Krishna-conscious literature. And this is really pleasing to Krishna. Know it for certain. Just maintain our strong position of purity, of routine work, and preach and distribute literature. That's all. I'll read that again. Just maintain our strong position of purity, of routine work, and preach and distribute literature. That's all. Distribution of books and magazines is our most important activity. Without books, our preaching has no solid basis. These books are the best advertising. They are better than advertising. If we simply present Krishna consciousness in a serious and attractive way, without need to resort to fashionable slogans or tricks, that is sufficient. Our unique asset is our purity. The sufferings of humanity are due to forgetfulness of Krishna as the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, and the supreme friend. Therefore, to act to revive this consciousness within the entire human society is the highest welfare work. That's from Bhagavad Gita. And from the Bhagavatam, anyone who makes a gift of this great work, Srimad Bhagavatam, on a full moon day, attains to the highest perfection of life by returning to Godhead. That's from the Srimad Bhagavatam, the first verse, purport of the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The lecture today is being given by Ranjit Prabhu, and these are the devotees who assisted their spiritual master in dressing the deities. Today, Sunday, the 23rd of November. Mother Nitai Priya dressed Shri Radha Shyam Sundar. Mother Shachi Sundari dressed Shri Krishna Balaram. Mother Mantrini dressed Chota Krishna Balaram. Mother Madhuri Gopi dressed Shri Gaur Nitai. Mother Ishta Shakti dressed Chota Gaur Nitai. Ramanya Prabhu, dressed the gurus, I suppose, and Krishna Kripa Prabhu dressed Lord Nrsimhadev. Hope that's right. Hare Krishna.
Los Angeles, New York, so people would come from all over the world.
Hare Krishna. We need one helper in the kitchen, please, for Katha and general.
Celebrate that festival with Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, this is in front of the 518 Frederick Street. This is right on the sidewalk in front of Frederick Street. Devotees painting the canopy and upholstering the asanas. This was the biggest festival that was ever held in ISKCON in the early days, 1970 Rath Yatra. It was like this monster. Out of this little storefront, we created this huge publicity campaign, and we mobilized the whole city of San Francisco.
All of this happened, all these 3 huge Rath carts, all generated out of this little teeny San Francisco center. You know, you really couldn't call it a temple. It was just a storefront. Really teeny. Imagine the energy and there was no consideration of yourself. You just never thought about yourself. Oh, I'm tired. Oh, I'm wet. Oh, I'm cold. You just got on with it. You couldn't disappoint Prabhupada. At the time, I was a new devotee, been a devotee about 4 months. Of course, I'd been hearing Prabhupada's lectures and reading his books and listening to some of the recordings. And there was a lot of anticipation about Rath Yatra in general, but the airport. We went to the airport to greet him. There was just so many devotees there. We were just having this huge kirtan, waiting for Prabhupada to come.
I had joined in '69 at 518 Frederick Street, but I couldn't stay because I was a Canadian. So I went back up to Canada and moved into the temple in Vancouver, and I stayed there for 6 months. We came down for Rath Yatra, and by that time I was really psyched up. You're meeting the spiritual master of the universe. You've been wandering throughout the universe for millions of lifetimes. Now, with this meeting, your karma, everything is going to be relieved. So I was quite excited.
You know, we're waiting for the plane to come in, and Prabhupada was coming off the plane, and he was walking up. It seemed like to me he was by himself. Maybe there were some devotees in the background, but the image I have is Prabhupada was walking up this plank, and he had this very innocent expression. I had never really seen a person exemplify that kind of humility before, because he was walking up and he had this expression as if to like turn around and see who everyone had come to meet. But I got all the temple presidents to spend like $100 each and buy these white gardenias, those big, beautiful, highly scented gardenias. Each president stepped forward and gave him a huge white gardenia, just covered with gardenias. His eyes were very penetrating, something about his eyes. It seems like Krishna Bhakti comes from his eyes or something, but just for a second feeling his glance and just feeling the depth of that glance and the intensity of emotion that everyone felt. We were just caught up, and everyone around me and myself, tears were just coming from our eyes, and just seeing a person who had characteristics that I'd never experienced before, and feeling the intensity of the kirtan, and it was very moving to this day. We used to be able to do that, go into an airport and just rock it down, you know? Everything was for Prabhupada. We didn't know anything else. We didn't know anyone else. We were like clean slates. He taught us everything. We had no outside influence. Look at that.
He's dancing right in the airport. Why? Because he got a wonderful welcome, and the devotees were so enthusiastic. So, you know, you reciprocated. And the more you could do for him, the more he would reciprocate in kind.
That's the lot. 3 carts are being built in that lot. And this is where Srila Prabhupada came to visit the Rath Yatra cart. And he amazed all the devotees. He just laid out flat on the dirt and paid his obeisances to the Rath Yatra cart. And he said, the Rath is as good as the deity. You can see Jayananda and Naranarayana there.
Here it is, the moment of truth, actually. You see, we're pulling the Rath Yatra cars out into the street, more or less in front of the temple on 518 Frederick Street. I'm in the middle of all of this because I figure if anyone's going to get squashed, I'm the designer and architect, and I should be the one to get squashed. When we had finally built them and realized how massive they were, we were scared stiff as to what would happen when we took them off the blocks and started rolling them down the hill. We thought they would continue to roll and go right through the temple door and out the back and down into the bay. I might add, it had no brakes whatsoever, and therefore, if it had gotten away, it would have gotten away. What we did with the paint was we used natural earth pigments. I took deep tone latex base and mixed the pigments with water and had it shaken up with the paint place. And so what we did was we used the same pigmentation that they use in Jagannath Puri. You see how many men it was required to break the Rath Yatra car? All of this was designed and built custom within a matter of a few weeks. I think we had about 6 or 8 weeks in which we built everything from scratch. And we were able to acquire lumber. We spent very little cash for lumber. Most of it was acquired from donation and wood that was left inadvertently lying around.
Srila Prabhupada sent Naranarayan up to design the carts. And I remember one meeting that Naranarayan was walking around the room holding his head, you know, and Srila Prabhupada said, well, what was a matter? Because you could see Naranarayan was in anxiety. And he told Srila Prabhupada that he needed special empowerment. He felt he needed a special empowerment in order to do these carts. And he told Prabhupada it had to come in a name. So Prabhupada told him, all right, then for this, now you have become Vishwakarma, the architect of the universe. And Narayan lit up, and that was all he needed to get his inspiration for figuring out how to build all the 3 carts. But he had to invent the scopes for the domes coming down.
The tops were designed so that the whole Rath Yatra cart could slip under a 15-foot high overpass. So the entire part came down. We had it all designed the year before where you just took a pole and lowered it down, but that cart was only 35 feet tall. These were like over 60 feet tall. And so we just were building it, we didn't think. And then Srila Prabhupada was in Los Angeles, he happened to talk to Tamal and said, and how is the lowering mechanism going to be used, designed? And Tamal said, oh, Naranarayan is working on that. He knows all about it. He's a genius engineer. He can do it, you know. So Srila Prabhupada said to Tamal, so who is checking on Naranarayan? And Tamal said, oh, you don't have to check on Naranarayan. He knows what he's doing. And Prabhupada said, why not ask? So Tamal phoned up. He said, I hate to ask you this, you know, I mean, it's so silly, but how are you doing the mechanism? How is it raising up? And we said, well, we're just, we hadn't thought of how to do it. So Lochan, myself, Madhavisa, and Jayananda, we all sat there for 4 days without sleeping, day and night, not able to figure out how to raise that top. And finally, somehow or other, it came to me how to make this telescoping tube that could be raised up in increments, which is sort of the model that's been used ever since, except it's been made, you know, much more sophisticated since then, much better design. But then Prabhupada said sternly, no one should ever be in charge completely of something. There should be a committee to make sure. Because Prabhupada, if anyone, had tremendous confidence in what I could do, and Tamal had complete confidence in what I could do, and yet I had made the biggest blunder that could have destroyed the whole festival if we had not stopped and worked that out.
When he first came to the temple, I wasn't very conscious of who he was. He was like a brand new devotee. And he came into the temple room, and everyone paid their obeisances, and when everyone had their heads down, I looked up at Srila Prabhupada, and he laughed, he smiled at me, and it was the first realization that I ever had, that he was the first person that had ever loved me. That was very clear, that he was the first person in my life that had ever loved me, and then he knew clearly who I was, and everything about me. I felt, he saw right through me, whatever. Not in a bad way, not like saw through my artificiality, but saw who I really was. That was a very, very special thing. And then, everyone sat down and he spoke a little bit, and then, someone brought him a plate of sweets, and I remember he took a gulabjamun and he tossed it in his mouth from his lap. It was so incredible. I've tried it in the past, and it just lands on my forehead or over my shoulder, but it was so incredible to watch him. Everything he did was so perfect and aristocratic.
Oh, these are the horses. Well, this is interesting. My father made the horses. My father's a dramatic Holocaust survivor. His heart had flames coming out of it from the Holocaust in the Warsaw Ghetto. And so he built these horses. He painted them with fire and with smoke. They looked as though they were smoldering. And he put them on the front of the Rath Yatra cars, which was quite a contribution. So 4 for each Rath Yatra car. I wanted to engage him, so I asked him to do it. But when I saw the horses, I was absolutely horrified. They looked like horses of the apocalypse coming out of hell. So my father was very proud of them. They were rather dramatic horses. My parents, I should say, were separated for 40 years. So my mother was also at the Rath Yatra festival, and that my mother and father hadn't seen each other for, maybe 5 years, My mother walks up and said, "Who has made these horses?" She recoils in horror, seeing these smoldering, burned, crazed horses with wild rolling eyes. "Who has made these horses?" And I look at her and say, "My dad made them." She said, "Well, this will never do." So she went and grabbed buckets of paint and painted them all up with nice, the merry-go-round design, caparisoned and white and clean and healthy-looking horses. And there they looked at these horses together, and they sort of felt, yes, this is what we've done to honor our son's choice. And I could see that they both felt great satisfaction. And from my perspective, as a budding transcendentalist, 2 years in the movement, I thought, this is their devotional service. This is the moment that was created for them by Lord Krishna to accomplish something in their lives and to give my brother and myself permission to go forward with the power of the Pitris behind us.
I got the Krishna book published in Japan by Dainapan. I had to go there to supervise. This is the first book with color photos. This was very special. The windows to the spiritual world. I went there, I think it was May, and I told Dainapan, I met with all the executives, that there was a festival in July, and I wanted to bring the book, the finished book, to the festival in San Francisco. So it meant that they had 2 months to produce the book. And they said, impossible. I said, well, there is no impossible. You have to do it. Because I want to present the book to the spiritual master at the festival. And they said, well, it's impossible, but anyway, we'll try. So they worked so hard. And I would go every day and push them. Every day I would ask them, you're going to have it ready, you're going to have it ready. And they said, it's impossible, it's impossible. And then I booked my return flight to arrive in San Francisco the day of Rath Yatra. And actually, they didn't have it ready. And I said, this is going to have a serious repercussions for our future business with you and so on. And then I went to the airport. So as I was walking up the stairs to get on the plane, this big black limousine drove out onto the tarmac. It had flags on it. Dainapan was one of the largest companies in Japan. They printed Thai magazine and everything. this long black limousine, and it comes right to the airplane. And out come all the Dynapon executives, you know, in their blue suits, about 5 of them. So I went down, and they all bowing, you know, from the waist, and they gave me this carton. You know, the stewardess said, come on, you know, you got to get on the plane, you know, they had to take off. So I didn't, I just took the carton, I thanked them, and got on the plane. You know, couldn't wait for the plane to take off. It tore open the carton, and there's this silver shining Krishna book. It was so ecstatic. Then I start going through the book and looking at every pictures and, you know, how it all turned out. And there was this man next to me. He was a business executive, American. And he saw me, he said, you know, what do you got there? And I said, oh, this is, you know, my spiritual master. I printed the book in Japan. It was our first book. And he said, how much is it? And I said, whatever I said, $10 or something, which was a good amount in those days. He said, okay, I'll take it. So then, you know, I came to San Francisco, went right away to Prabhupada's apartment. I brought in the carton, presented the book to Prabhupada. Prabhupada was so pleased, and he said, you know, how many copies do you have? I said, well, there were 20, but now there's only 19. He said, oh, only 19? What happened to the other one? I said, well, I sold it on the plane to the person next to me. Prabhupada said, oh, very good. This is very auspicious. But the first copy was distributed. Then he ordered, he said, all these books, there were only 19 of them. He said, these should all be distributed at the Rath Yatra. And then the one that he had in his hand, and he said, and this one also.
You couldn't see the deities until they were on the rough cart. That was one of our technicalities that we thought, you know, had to be there. And no one should view the deities until, it was like, you know, it was like looking at prasadam before you offer it. So nobody's going to see the deities until they get on the Rath Yatra cart. And then, when they were all up on the cart, then they would be, you know, revealed in all their magnificence.
I think there was some disturbances going on, and Prabhupada had given Vishnu Jan the Nrsimha prayers. And Vishnu Jan had just been up with Prabhupada and came down, and we were on the street right in front of the temple. And Vishnu Jan said to all of us that Prabhupada had given him this mantra for protection of the festival. And right on the street, he taught us. And I think this is the first time we chanted the Nrsimha prayers.
Myself and Gargamuni and others there, we did not want Prabhupada to go to the Rath Yatra festival. What had happened was that we got threats. The Black Panthers sent word that we're going to attack your guru if you hold this festival. And they were very credible threats. So we were afraid. So we told Prabhupada that, you know, you shouldn't go to the festival. But Prabhupada couldn't accept this. First of all, he didn't care so much about threats. But second, it was just inconceivable that Prabhupada would not go to the Rath Yatra. And Prabhupada insisted on going. And I was insisting Prabhupada not go. So Prabhupada insisted, you know, you must take me. So Gargamuni was driving the car, and he drove very slowly, and he took a very roundabout route in order to arrive late at the festival.
Things started out well, but they quickly got worse. One of the carts had a certified weld that cracked, and Balaram's car was out of commission. The newspapers wrote an article called Hare Krishna. That was just after we were attacked by the Black Panthers. And so they had all these Black Panthers all in afros, black t-shirts, and black pants. And they attacked with some martial arts. So Brahmananda and others were fighting them. And we had poles to keep them from getting crushed under the Rath Yatra cars, very beautifully decorated poles. So we used these poles to fend them off. My father was dressed like an Old Testament prophet of old with his white beard, and he was stood there, and he had a staff. He was crashing it onto the ground, crying, "Tolerance, tolerance, tolerance." We marched literally 7 miles to the sea. At one point there were cars parked on either side, and I cried out, "Move the cars," and 25 people would grab each car and just send it skittering. Now Subhadra's cart had an interesting miracle attached to it as well. What happened is we came along, and Shyamasundar had used a piece of malleable iron as the axle for Subhadra's cart. And it had started to get worn through after 2 years of Rath Yatras, which we weren't aware of. So we warned everyone not to ride on Subhadra's cart because we were worried about it not being strong. But guess what? People got on anyhow, and the wheel bent almost horizontal. We thought, oh no, we've lost Balaram's cart. Now we've lost Subhadra's cart. What on earth are we going to do? So it suddenly occurred to me, and I said, wait a minute. I want 50 people to lift Subhadra's cart. And 50 people rushed forward and lifted Subhadra's cart. And I want another 50 people to grab the wheel and bend it down again. And they did. They came and they took the wheel, and that piece of iron that was 2.5 inches thick, they just bent it back again so the wheel was perfectly vertical. And I said, now I want another 50 people to guard it so nobody gets on. And nobody got on.
When Prabhupada arrived at Rath Yatra in the middle of Golden Gate Park, all the devotees stopped. Srila Prabhupada was supposed to give a lecture at the beginning of the Rath Yatra festival, but because there was some disturbance at that time, Prabhupada delayed his arrival, and he entered Golden Gate Park up the road about a mile or so from the beginning, and then walked back towards the Rath Yatra cart and took everybody by surprise. Prabhupada had many garlands that were given to him, and he took one of his garlands off, and he looked for Jayananda, and he garlanded Jayananda with the flower garlands that was given to him, making that benediction to Jayananda. And Prabhupada began to dance in a circle, and you see Prabhupada's flowing robes. Bhavananda picked out the fabric for that cloth.
And I saw this really nice shimmery peach silk satin cloth, but it was actually, I think, like an upholstery cloth, but it was beautiful. So I wanted that, so I bought that, and I insisted, Madhavisa was tearing his seek out, I insisted on buying real pearls. I wanted to make real pearl buttons and a real pearl button on the side, the little strap that goes under his chin on his Prabhupada hat, a real pearl there. So Madhavisa, mumbling and grumbling, gave me the money. And when Madhavisa brought the cloth over, Prabhupada looked at it and said, "As you dress me, so I shall dance." Yeah, it was... wonderful.
He gave instructions about the dancing, I know that. For that year, I think it was 1970, that he told the devotees how to dance. In front of the deities, specifically, based on the descriptions that are in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. At that time, the Chaitanya Charitamrita was not available. In one group, Lord Nityananda would be the dancer in front of one chariot, and another chariot, I think it was Advaitacharya, may have been the dancer, like that. It's basically for the pleasure of the deity, then you have an ecstatic dancer, not to impress the crowd, but in Krishna consciousness for the specific pleasure of the deity.
Prabhupada was showing the devotees that he liked to dance. You know, not just the Swami step, but jumping up and down. That was a new revelation. He introduced that at Lasayanika Boulevard Temple, at the temple. He had introduced the jumping. You know, before the Swami step was the conservative dance step that was used by everybody. But when Prabhupada started to jump at the Lasayanika Boulevard Temple in Los Angeles, that's when jumping became, you know, part of the choreography of the temple.
At the start of the procession, we had speakers on Subhadra's car, and Jivananda and I and a couple other devotees were sitting in the back with microphones to have Kirtan over the microphone. Then Prabhupada sent word back that he didn't want the speakers anymore, and he just wanted Kirtan parties in the crowd like in India. So Jivananda and I turned the speakers off, hopped out, and started doing Kirtan.
We marched literally 7 miles to the sea. Nobody thought of complaining or why don't we have buses to take us or something. People marched 7 miles to the sea, and when they got there at the Family Dog Auditorium, which was run by Chet Helms, who did all the Janis Joplin and Grateful Dead concerts and Moby Grape and Quicksilver and all that. There are those horses again. He let us use that place, and there were 10,000 people waiting at the beach who hadn't wanted to go through the ordeal of marching.
I was helping to cook, and then I went down to the Family Dog Auditorium where Srila Prabhupada was going to come after. There were so many people that would participate, actually, that we filled the Family Dog Auditorium, and simultaneously the beach was also filled with people, and we were distributing prasadam in both places. Big kirtans were going on in both places. And I was in the Family Dog when Srila Prabhupada arrived. And it was just so wonderful. Srila Prabhupada was such a swan amongst men. And he floated into the Family Dog Auditorium. There were literally thousands and thousands of hippies present. And they were all in their full regalia, because this was a big event for them. So just ordinarily in that day, people's dress was interesting enough. But for this Rath Yatra festival, they really decked themselves out. Many dressed as Radha and Krishna and similar costumes like that. And so Srila Prabhupada came amongst this. He walked onto the stage, and he looked out amongst the throngs of hippies, and he smiled. Then he said, "I have come to make all the hippies into happies." And that evoked a tremendous tumult of transcendental roaring from all the devotees that were present. And everyone got swept away in this wave, this tidal wave of ecstasy that was coming from Srila Prabhupada's heart, and danced for hours and hours and hours. Vishnujan would just be chanting and swooning, and then he would just cry out, just chant and dance, and when you're tired, take prasadam, and then come and chant and dance some more. And that's literally what went on for hours and hours and hours.
There were so many unusual people there, and Srila Prabhupada explaining that the people in general had become hippies because they were disillusioned with modern society. But if they didn't find any guidance, then they would end up in a more difficult situation than the one that they had actually left. And he urged all of these hippies, drug-taking hippies, to take up his message of Krishna consciousness and actually become first-class human beings. It was an amazing experience for me. I think it was what cemented my understanding that I should stay within the Krishna consciousness family.
They assigned duties to everyone, and I was to be in charge of making the feast with the idea of feeding between 5,000 and 10,000 people, maybe more. So, undaunted, I had never really cooked for large amounts of people, but in those days, we could climb Mount Everest and not be tired. Prabhupada's energy was just driving the movement so powerfully that if we were given a duty to do, it was nothing. It was a feast, actually, that Prabhupada requested. There was so much prasadam there. We had gotten truckloads of watermelons donated. So at the end, we just stopped slicing the watermelons and just started giving whole watermelons to take home with them or to serve out.
And it was the Family Dog Auditorium. It used to be the Shrine Auditorium. It was the Family Dog Auditorium. And Bhavananda had gotten a bunch of barbecue grills and filled them with briquettes and just bags and bags of frankincense incense. So the whole place was just billowing with frankincense incense. But I remember that a bunch of the Hells Angels followed us. They sort of got their fighting spirit out of them, and they followed the carts. So when we got to the Family Dog Auditorium, Prabhupada came on the stage a little bit later. We were all inside the auditorium. And when Prabhupada came in, all the devotees bowed down. And there was something so magnanimous and also heavy about Prabhupada's presence that so many other people bowed down. It's not an unusual occurrence that people would just instinctively bow down, that here's a saintly person. And I remember that it was a wood floor, and when they bowed down, there was a couple of Hells Angels next to me, and their chains and billy clubs and everything fell out and hit the floor, and I was thinking how when all the Lord Brahmas, all bowed before Krishna and all their helmets, so I was thinking that Prabhupada and Kali Yuga, even the Hells Angels with all their billy clubs and helmets and everything. And Prabhupada started the lecture. It was the most amazing thing because they were hippies and college students and from UC Berkeley and San Jose State, and then there were these Hells Angels and there were Black Panthers, just such a montage. And Prabhupada started off his lecture by saying, "My dear frustrated youth of America."
When Prabhupada danced, when we had Kirtan inside the Family Dog and Srila Prabhupada danced, it was like, it was very hard to even express what it was like. Everybody, the crowd went ecstatic. Not just devotees, all the people there were crying in ecstasy. It was just like, a miraculous event. Prabhupada looked like he floated. It appeared that his feet weren't even touching the stage. And then after the event, we had a little apartment for Srila Prabhupada that was just off of Frederick Street where Prabhupada was staying when he came up. And we drove up there, and Prabhupada was sitting in the car, and the door was open. And I was standing there with Jayananda, and Madhavisa knelt down at Srila Prabhupada and said to Srila Prabhupada, was he pleased, with the festival? And Prabhupada grabbed Madhavisa's head and pulled it over on his lap and rubbed his head like this and said, "I loved it." And all the devotees went crazy over that. That was Madhav looked like Ramachandra and Hanuman. He looked just like Hanuman kneeling in front of Lord Ramachandra. So the whole thing just looked so regal.
Prabhupada was so happy about the Rath Yatra festival and the success of it. He was just going on and on. He was saying, why have we done all this? Why have we put out all this energy to put on this festival? And he began to speak that this is the compassion of the Vaishnava. For the purpose of benefiting others, the Vaishnava goes to such great lengths to see to the preaching of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He said, "This is Vaishnavism, this is Vaishnavism." Twice he said, and actually tears began to come to his eyes. And as the tears came to his eyes, he couldn't speak anymore. This is Vaishnavism. As he thought of the success of the Rath Yatra. And so, being unable to speak anymore, he actually just waved his hand for everyone to leave. And I realized that I was going back to Hawaii very soon, so I let everyone leave, and I was the last one, and I paid my obeisances. And Prabhupada saw me there, and he pointed to his servant, at that time it was Kartikeya Maharaj, to give me the garland from his deities. And so he put it upon me. And I realized that in this moment of Srila Prabhupada's extraordinary compassion, I was getting his mercy in that form of that garden, and paid my obeisances and left.
And I remember in the airport, after the ecstatic greeting in Kirtan, there were some reporters there, and this reporter kept asking Srila Prabhupada when it was that he realized God. And Srila Prabhupada, as we know, would never ever put himself forward or take credit. He was always a humble servant of the servant of the servant of the servant of the most intimate devotees of Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada would just explain to the person that, anyone can realize God, and how God is there in the transcendental sound of his holy name. So Srila Prabhupada was trying to give him some philosophical understanding. But the man was very persistent, and he kept inquiring, but you, Swamiji, when did you first realize God? And so Srila Prabhupada smiled, and he said, I first realized God when I was 5 years old. And of course, Srila Prabhupada then said, actually, there was never a time when I did not remember God. So we know that Srila Prabhupada displayed the symptoms of a pure devotee from birth. He talks about that in the Bhagavatam, and how his symptoms also of holding Alachua and worshipping Radha Krishna, these are symptoms of a liberated soul coming into this material world just for the purpose of delivering the conditioned souls. So here Srila Prabhupada confirmed his full God realization from inception in this material world.
Those were the old days before terrorism, so we just used to take these huge monster kirtan parties right into the airport. And then Prabhupada came, and I guess there was a press conference. And I remember I was standing right next to Prabhupada. And I just remember I was looking at Prabhupada, and suddenly my heart started fluttering, and I felt the most incredible ecstasy that I've never before or since felt that ecstasy. I was standing there looking at Prabhupada.
We would all do like that. You see, we'd each given a flower, and then we would give it to him, and Srila Prabhupada would give us a flower in exchange. And occasionally he would stop and say something to one of the devotees, and we were all sort of hoping that he would stop and say something to us. I remember I had been staying there in the temple for about 2 weeks, and one day he stopped, and when I offered my flower, he said to me, "Oh, you're new here?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Are you happy here?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Very good." I took the flower, and he continued. But it was very exciting. That was the most exciting part of the day, as we'd all line up kneeling on either side of the entranceway into the temple. And the children would run down the middle, and Srila Prabhupada would show them some extra affection and play with them a little bit. Show them different flowers until they found one they liked. He was always very, very affectionate with the children.
The exchange of flowers that started in Los Angeles after Prabhupada came back from his morning walk was just one of the sweetest and most memorable exchanges that I've ever had in my Krishna conscious career with Prabhupada. Prabhupada would go on the morning walk, and typically he would go to Venice, but not always, Venice Beach. And then when he returned, prior to the greeting of the deities, the devotees would be prepared for him in 2 lines, and all the children would be there. And it was such a sweet time. Everybody was so happy that it's so obvious that the children also sort of enjoyed the whole thing. The whole atmosphere was just completely enjoyable and family-like. This wonderful, wonderful exchange of flowers with Prabhupada. And then this was going on outside the temple. I mean, we could have done it inside the temple or something, but it was just there being done as Prabhupada dismounted from the car, and we were right there on the street and greeting Prabhupada right when he first arrived there.
Prabhupada got out of his car, and as he got out of his car, Prabhupada had his foot there, and Dinanath hopped down, grabbed Prabhupada's foot, had Prabhupada's foot in his hand, and he was kissing Prabhupada's feet. And I'm like a new devotee. I'm like, he's kissing his feet. You know, the feet are considered to be the most objectionable part of the body. Not something that you would bend down and kiss. And I'm looking down, and Dinanath just completely ignored any kind of social convention. He had no concern for what anyone was thinking. And he was just kissing Prabhupada's feet, and I just remember I couldn't believe it. And Prabhupada just let him do it, and it seemed like ready to turn. I can't believe it. He's kissing his feet. But, Dinanath got the mercy.
So Srila Prabhupada, it was so personal in his dealings with the devotees, and that was one aspect that was so attractive to people in the early days of the Krishna consciousness movement. You see how Srila Prabhupada always relished reciprocating love with his devotees. It simply wasn't Srila Prabhupada asking for service or demanding things from his followers, but Srila Prabhupada always wanted to give back. And when Prabhupada would come to the temple in LA, I always think that's such a nice example of that, how Srila Prabhupada would reciprocate with us in this bhakti, this exchange of love, by giving flowers to the devotees as we would line up along the pavement. It was very sublime because Srila Prabhupada, he was never rushed. He would, we would give him a flower, and then Srila Prabhupada would give us a flower. And I always think how Srila Prabhupada said that love is an exchange of feeling. You need 2 for love. And I remember he would, sometimes when we would give a flower and then he would give one back, Prabhupada would just stand there, so when we bowed down, we could put our head right on Srila Prabhupada's feet. And he was always, had this very ecstatic, blissful smile, and you could see that Srila Prabhupada loved us in such a way that was practically incomprehensible, because he saw us as these lost particles of spirit soul from Lord Krishna, and he was so happy to play a part in bringing us back to Krishna's lotus feet. That's me. Whoa. Expect me there. So this was just a real highlight in my life of being able to,
get a flower for Srila Prabhupada and give a flower back to Srila Prabhupada. So simple, yet so sublime. And there was always one devotee who would block Srila Prabhupada's walkway, his pathway into the temple, just so he could get to ask Srila Prabhupada for his mercy or to say something to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada never ever got disturbed or agitated that this person was being so bold in his approach. He would always just shake his head wonderfully or touch the devotee on his head with a blessing. So we all felt that this was a very special time where Srila Prabhupada was really giving us a blessing. And when he was handing us this flower, it was like, Prabhupada was touching our heart with that flower, that soft lotus petal of his flower-like glance.
Shortly after this exchange, everybody would follow Prabhupada into the temple, and there was the greeting of the deities. Prior to this, at least in Los Angeles, I don't think that there was really a formal greeting of the deities ceremony. So I believe this basically introduced the greeting of the deities ceremony as we know it today. At least it certainly did in Los Angeles. And then typically on many mornings, Shilabhati would fill the deity room with frankincense, clouds of frankincense. And then when she opened the doors, the frankincense would often billow out into the temple, and there would be this sort of cloud of frankincense, which also, to me, was very mystical, and Prabhupada bowing down. And then afterwards, he took Charanamrita, and then he would proceed to his Vyasasan. And I remember Vishnu Jan leading us in the Samsara prayers. One time, Prabhupada, at the end of the singing of the Samsara prayers, said very gravely, Samsara davana lalitaloka, and then he said the whole first verse, and he said, what is the meaning? And everybody was stunned, because probably a few devotees knew, but after being quizzed like that from Prabhupada, nobody knew, and then one person recited the English meaning of the verse. But Prabhupada then said that we should all know what the meaning was.
It wasn't too long after I joined that the Govinda prayers started to be played in the morning. The album had come from England, that Radha Krishna Temple album. Just one morning it happened. It seemed quite spontaneous that the deity doors opened up and the Govinda prayers went on. And Prabhupada went through as normal, offering his dandavats in front of each altar. But when he went around and he sat on the Vyasasan, tears were coming down his face. He was so pleased by the Govinda prayers, and he wasn't able to speak for some time.
We were celebrating